The story begins with a glimpse of the most powerful king in this futuristic world. Backed by a vast and formidable military, he successfully conquers large territories, expanding his dominion across the land. Yet something feels off. As he reaches out to touch a crown encased behind a glass cabinet, the scene suddenly shifts. We're thrust forward in time to find this very same king reborn as a baby, but with his memories and consciousness intact. The question looms large: what happened to his old body? The immediate concern, however, is that the once mighty king is now an infant. The baby, named Arthur, grows up under the care of his loving parents, Reynolds and Alice. Though helpless in his tiny body, Arthur quickly observes that his new parents are both skilled magic wielders. Alice specializes in healing magic, while Reynolds is more attack-oriented, favoring a spirited and combative style. Knowledge, as Arthur knows well, is a powerful weapon, and he wastes no time using it to his advantage. This world allows individuals to own weapons, a detail that immediately catches Arthur's attention. Recognizing the potential dangers that come with such freedom, he begins plotting how best to prepare himself. As time passes, Arthur grows stronger and eventually learns to crawl. With his newfound mobility, he heads straight for the most alluring treasure in the house, books. Through reading, Arthur gains invaluable insight into the structure of this world. He learns that it is called Detached, a land divided into 3 distinct kingdoms. To the south lies the Darv Kingdom, home to the dwarves. Far to the north is the Elenoir Kingdom, where elves dwell deep within their enchanted forests. Finally, to the west lies the Sapin Kingdom, inhabited by humans. Sapin is also the most populous of the 3 and, like Arthur's former realm, governed by a monarchy. However, unlike his old world where power was seized, here the throne is inherited. Another striking difference is that Detached appears to be in a much earlier stage of development compared to Arthur's technologically advanced past life. Yet, the most defining feature of this new world is the existence of mana. Not everyone can wield it, as magical ability is hereditary and only manifests in about 1 out of every 100 people. Mana itself is divided into 2 primary forms, augmenting and conjuring. Augmenting enhances physical attributes such as strength, dexterity, and defense, while conjuring focuses more on protection, healing, and support magic. This neatly reflects what Arthur has already observed in his parents, Reynolds as an augmenter and Alice as a conjurer. Control over magic comes through mastering one's mana core, the central source through which all energy flows. This concept closely resembles Ki from Arthur's previous world, suggesting that his past life's understanding of energy could play a crucial role in unlocking extraordinary power here. Arthur begins training his mana control at just 2 years old. Despite his rigorous self-discipline, he can't help but grow fond of his new life. His past existence as a king was cold, isolated, and devoid of affection, while this new life offers warmth, family, and genuine love. Through brief flashes of memory, it's hinted that the king may have been an orphan, which makes his current bond with Reynolds and Alice all the more meaningful. After 2 years of effort, little Arthur finally manages to cultivate his own mana core. His hard work begins to bear fruit, until one fateful day when he accidentally triggers a massive explosion inside the house. Just as a heavy beam is about to crush him, Reynolds rushes in and shields his son from harm. Alice embraces Arthur tightly, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed by the raw love and emotion surrounding him, Arthur begins to cry too, experiencing, perhaps for the very first time, the warmth of true family and compassion. We open with a glimpse into the king's original world, a cold, futuristic realm ruled by power and fear. In this world, King Grey passes judgment on a captured emissary guilty of crimes against the crown. The emissary is sentenced to death, but in a twisted display of mercy, the king decides to spare him by sending him back to his homeland. The catch? This act is nothing short of a death sentence, as betrayal of the king never goes unpunished. To make matters worse, the king personally executes the man's wife and child before his eyes, a cruel demonstration of absolute authority. Cutting back to the fantasy world, we find Arthur at the age of 4. He's grown considerably, able to walk, talk, and even begin training under his father, Reynolds. Despite his young age, Arthur's progress is astonishing. He quickly masters the art of channeling mana into his wooden sword, much to Reynolds' shock. Realizing his son's remarkable aptitude, Reynolds begins to understand that Arthur's abilities are far beyond what he can teach. He suggests that Arthur should train under a proper mentor who can guide him to his full potential. However, Alice hesitates at the idea, as it would mean sending her young child away to another town. Arthur, understanding their concern, proposes a different solution. What if they all move together? His growing affection for his parents is clear. Despite having once been a cold and distant king, he now genuinely cherishes this family and the warmth they bring. When the time comes to leave, Reynolds and Alice aren't traveling alone. They're joined by the Twin Horns, an adventuring party the couple once belonged to. The group is composed of colorful and skilled members: Adam Crench, the red-haired fighter with a scar across his nose and a bold attitude; Angela Rose, a sweet, cheerful healer embodying the classic white mage archetype; Helen Shard, the team's sharp-eyed archer; Jasmine Flamesworth, the quiet and graceful rogue who wields twin daggers; and Durden Walker, the calm, strategic mind who seems to be the brains of the operation. Every member of the Twin Horns is adept at controlling mana, making them a formidable team. Their journey leads them toward a destination called Xyrus, a renowned city known for its magical institutions. Along the way, we learn more about Alice's unique abilities. She's revealed to be an emitter, a rare and powerful class of mage capable of healing and manipulating mana externally. However, this gift comes with danger. Emitters are highly sought after, often targeted by those wishing to exploit their powers. This explains why Alice and Reynolds had chosen to live in the remote wilderness, far from prying eyes. To gauge Arthur's growing strength, Adam decides to spar with him during the trip. Though Arthur impressively holds his own for someone so young, his skills aren't yet enough to defeat an experienced warrior. Still, the encounter earns him the respect of the Twin Horns. Jasmine, in particular, seems to take a liking to Arthur. For his birthday, she gifts him a small sword, a gesture that means more to him than words can express. As the journey continues, it's clear that Arthur is steadily growing stronger, both in skill and spirit. However, peace never lasts long. While traveling along a narrow mountain path, the group is ambushed by a large band of ruthless bandits. Despite being well-coordinated and skilled, the Twin Horns are vastly outnumbered. The skirmish turns chaotic as enemies swarm from every direction. Amid the confusion, Reynolds instructs Arthur to take Alice and run for safety. In a tense and emotional moment, Reynolds reveals the truth: Alice is pregnant. Her recent mood swings suddenly make sense, and the stakes become even higher. Arthur hesitates, torn between wanting to help and protecting his mother, but ultimately obeys his father's command. Arthur flees with Alice into the forest as Reynolds and the Twin Horns desperately hold off the attackers. Just when it seems they might be gaining ground, a mysterious blonde mage appears high above on a cliff. With a cold, calculating expression, he summons an immense whirlwind of mana that tears through the battlefield. The blast strikes with devastating force, sending Arthur tumbling violently off a cliff. As he plummets toward the trees below, time seems to slow. In those final moments of consciousness, Arthur reflects on his life, his past as a merciless king, the love he's found in this world, and the meaning of empathy that he's only just begun to understand. Arthur awakens on the forest floor, dazed but alive. As he looks up, a towering creature steps from the shadows, its presence both powerful and calm. With a faint smile, it greets him softly. "Good morning." The creature introduces herself as Sylvia and claims to be Arthur's ally. She tends to his injuries and helps him recover from the fall. When Arthur regains his strength, Sylvia reveals that he has been unconscious for several days. In that time, his parents were forced to continue their journey without him, believing he was lost. The revelation fills Arthur with sadness, but he remains determined to reunite with them. As more time passes, Arthur expresses his desire to leave the forest, but Sylvia warns him that it's far too dangerous. The woods are infested with powerful monsters, and while Arthur has grown stronger, he's still not ready to face such threats alone. Moreover, Sylvia herself is bound to her cave and cannot leave it. During their time together, Sylvia begins to teach Arthur about magic on a deeper level. She demonstrates that it's possible to use magic while simultaneously absorbing mana from the environment, essentially allowing spells to be cast indefinitely without exhausting one's energy. However, when Arthur eagerly asks her to teach him how to do this, Sylvia refuses. She senses lingering darkness within his heart, remnants of his former life filled with hatred and violence. Until he can let go of that burden, she tells him, he is not yet worthy of learning her secrets. This challenge forces Arthur to confront his past as King Grey. Reflecting on his former self, the cold, ruthless ruler who valued power above compassion, Arthur begins to understand the meaning of true strength. He realizes he cannot allow his new life to mirror the mistakes of his old one. In a moment of clarity, Arthur swears to protect others and to live with empathy rather than domination. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, another powerful creature, identical in form to Sylvia, prowls the wilderness, searching for her. The tension quietly builds as the two are destined to cross paths. Back in the cave, after countless hours of practice and effort, Arthur finally learns to replicate Sylvia's mana technique, mastering the ability to absorb energy while casting magic. Just as he achieves this breakthrough, the second creature discovers their location. Sensing the danger, Sylvia quickly hides Arthur deep within the cave and steps forward to confront her pursuer. In this critical moment, she reveals her true form, a magnificent white dragon, her scales shimmering with ethereal light. Time itself seems to halt as she unleashes her power, freezing the world around them. Within this stillness, Sylvia turns to Arthur and reminds him of his vow, to protect others and never again succumb to darkness. She then gifts him 3 precious items, a magic crystal, one of her own feathers, and a dragon tattoo etched into his skin that mirrors the markings on her body. Each carries a fragment of her strength and essence. The two share an emotional farewell, and Arthur, moved to tears, acknowledges Sylvia as his adoptive grandmother, recognizing the deep bond they've formed. With her remaining power, Sylvia uses a final spell to teleport Arthur as close to his parents as she can. Time resumes, and the opposing dragon attacks. Summoning the last of her strength, Sylvia launches a cataclysmic explosion that collapses the cave around them, ensuring Arthur's safety while confronting her foe. When Arthur awakens, he finds himself once again alone in the forest. Sylvia is gone, her sacrifice lingering in the air like a fading dream. Though heartbroken, Arthur stands resolute, determined to survive the dangers of the wilderness and reunite with his family. His true journey begins here. Almost immediately after beginning his journey, Arthur stumbles upon a disturbing scene, a group of slavers transporting a young elf girl in chains. Acting on instinct, he ambushes the group, swiftly taking down 3 of the slavers with precise, calculated strikes. However, their leader turns out to be a skilled mage, forcing Arthur into a fierce magical duel. The battle is intense and exhausting, but after a grueling struggle, Arthur emerges victorious, killing the mage and freeing the girl. For a fleeting moment, as he looks at her, the elf reminds Arthur of a woman he once knew in his previous life, a ghost from his past that briefly stirs something deep within him. Wanting to ensure her safety, Arthur initially plans to send the girl back to her homeland of Elenoir on her own. However, he quickly realizes she's far too young to survive the journey alone. Reluctantly, he decides to escort her himself, despite his growing anxiety about delaying his search for his parents. Along the way, Arthur learns that the girl's name is Tesha. Tesha dreams of one day becoming a mage herself. Despite the dangers they face, she remains remarkably optimistic and begins to open up to Arthur as they travel together. Still, Arthur keeps his guard up, especially after he notices that one of the slavers' pet wolves has been following them from a distance. Though it doesn't appear hostile, its presence keeps Arthur on edge. As the journey continues, Arthur grows increasingly irritable. The detour to help Tesha is taking valuable time away from finding his parents, and the stress of the situation begins to wear on him. To make matters worse, he starts experiencing excruciating pain in his mana core, sharp, crippling bursts that leave him immobile for minutes at a time. During one particularly severe episode, Arthur collapses, unable to move. Just then, the same wolf that had been tailing them appears once more, this time carrying food in its jaws. It drops the meal beside them and departs silently into the woods. Arthur is left bewildered by the act of kindness, unsure whether to trust it, but Tesha smiles softly, convinced that the wolf is simply thanking them for setting it free. The moment brings a rare sense of calm amid the chaos, and the two continue their journey with renewed hope. Eventually, after days of travel, they arrive at an ancient teleportation portal hidden deep in the forest. Tesha recognizes it immediately as a gateway to Elenoir, and excitedly drags Arthur toward it. Before he can react, she activates the portal, pulling him inside. In an instant, they materialize in unfamiliar surroundings, surrounded by elven architecture and lush greenery. But before Arthur can get his bearings, he's abruptly seized by a group of elven soldiers. To his shock, Tesha, who just moments ago clung to him for safety, suddenly grows distant and indifferent, watching in silence as the soldiers restrain him. Tesha suddenly shouts for the soldiers to stop, but they ignore her and prepare to execute Arthur on the spot. Just as the situation turns dire, an authoritative voice cuts through the chaos. An elderly elf steps forward, Xyrus Academy, the retired king of Elenoir. His commanding presence immediately halts the soldiers, and to Arthur's astonishment, Tesha rushes to his side, calling the old man grandfather. It's then that Arthur realizes the truth: Tesha is a princess. Moments later, King Alduin and Queen Muriel, Tesha's parents, arrive at the scene. Outraged, they demand that Arthur be arrested at once for supposedly endangering their daughter. However, before the guards can act, Tesha intervenes again. In a burst of emotion, she scolds her parents, shouting over their protests until they reluctantly back down. Arthur is left speechless, not only by the revelation of Tesha's royal heritage, but also by her sudden hostility when they first arrived, followed by her fierce defense of him now. The shift in her demeanor leaves him thoroughly confused. At the castle, Arthur is brought before the royal family, where he recounts his story in detail, how he became separated from his parents, and how he rescued Tesha from the slavers. He deliberately omits any mention of Sylvia or his time with her, unsure how such information would be received. When asked about his future plans, Arthur politely requests to be sent back to Sapin, the human kingdom. Unfortunately, King Alduin explains that the only teleportation gate connecting Elenoir and Sapin is currently sealed and cannot be reopened for another 5 years. Hearing this, Arthur is disheartened. After some gentle but persistent persuasion from Tesha, Alduin agrees to assign a group of guards to escort Arthur back to Sapin on foot, though the journey will be long and perilous. Even so, Arthur begins to question whether returning is worth it. Doubt creeps in. What if his parents have moved on, believing he's dead? For the first time, uncertainty overshadows his resolve. Noticing his sudden gloom, Tesha steps in once more, her voice sharp but sincere. She tells him he's being foolish for doubting his parents' love and reminds him of the strength he's already shown. Her words cut through his despair, and Arthur realizes she's right. He shakes off the negativity and finds comfort in her unshakable faith. Soon after, Xyrus approaches Arthur with a mischievous glint in his eye. Having heard of the boy's feats, he requests a duel, curious to see firsthand how Arthur managed to defeat slavers all on his own. Arthur accepts, and the two engage in a spirited match. Despite Xyrus's centuries of experience, Arthur wins the first bout, surprising everyone present. Stubbornly refusing to accept defeat, Xyrus immediately demands a rematch. But before it can begin, Tesha intervenes, scolding her grandfather for picking on someone younger than himself. Amused but impressed, Xyrus finally relents. Recognizing Arthur's immense potential, he offers to take the boy on as his apprentice. He then reveals a critical discovery, the source of Arthur's agonizing mana pain. According to Xyrus, Arthur has unconsciously acquired something extraordinary, the will of a beast, a rare and powerful force inherited from a magical creature. However, this gift is as dangerous as it is potent. If Arthur fails to learn how to control it properly, Xyrus warns, it will eventually consume him from within and lead to his death. In his dreams, Arthur continues to suffer from intense pain radiating from his mana core, manifesting as a dark, shadowy monster clawing at him from within. Each night, the creature's presence feels stronger, feeding off his fear and uncertainty. Concerned for his student, Xyrus decides it's time to seek help from an old friend who may understand the nature of Arthur's affliction. Before they leave, Xyrus pulls Arthur aside and offers a word of caution about Tesha. As heir to the Elenoir throne, she has often been manipulated by those who pretend to be her friend for personal gain. Yet she trusts Arthur deeply, something Xyrus doesn't take lightly. He tells Arthur that he must be very special to Tesha if she truly sees him as a genuine companion rather than another opportunist. Their journey leads them to Reincarnated, a wise and reclusive elven sorceress known as a diviner, gifted with the ability to perceive glimpses of both the past and the future. Her aura is calm yet commanding, and her insight into mana and fate is unmatched. With Rinia's guidance, Arthur undergoes a delicate psychic ritual. Through her magic, he is able to project a mental message across vast distances, reaching his parents for the first time since their separation. Reynolds and Alice are overjoyed to hear from their son, their emotions overflowing as Arthur reassures them that he's safe and recovering from his mysterious illness. He promises that once he's healed, he will reunite with them in Xyrus, where they have been waiting and searching for him. Moved by both his determination and potential, Arthur officially agrees to become Xyrus's apprentice, committing himself to the long and rigorous training required to control the will of the beast within him. Soon after, Tesha insists on showing Arthur around Elenoir. The city is breathtaking, lush forests intertwined with elegant architecture and glowing streams of mana flowing through the trees. However, their peaceful outing takes a turn when they encounter a group of elven children, including Xyrus Ivsar, one of the so-called friends Xyrus had warned Arthur about. Xyrus's jealousy quickly surfaces. Furious that Tesha seems to prefer Arthur's company over his, he taunts and provokes Arthur into a fight. Tesha tries to de-escalate, but Xyrus's insults go too far, and refusing the challenge would dishonor Xyrus's name. Reluctantly, Arthur accepts the duel. It ends almost instantly. Arthur defeats Xyrus with a single, perfectly timed punch, knocking him unconscious before he can even draw mana. The display of strength leaves everyone in stunned silence, while Tesha can't help but smirk in satisfaction. The following day, Arthur begins his beast tamer training under Xyrus's strict supervision. 3 years pass, and the change in both Arthur and Tesha is remarkable. They've grown from children into capable young mages, stronger, wiser, and more confident in their abilities. Xyrus eventually reveals to Arthur that, due to the beast will within him, he cannot properly use sorcery. The immense power of the will constantly disrupts the balance between his physical body and his mana core, making it impossible for him to control traditional spells without risking serious harm. Instead, Xyrus focuses his training on enhancing Arthur's physical strength, mana control, and mastery over his unique connection to magical beasts. After 3 years of intense training, Xyrus decides the time has finally come to awaken the beast will. The process is dangerous, but necessary if Arthur is ever to control the power inside him. During the ritual, Arthur channels his mana deep into his core, but the moment the beast will awakens, a massive surge of energy erupts from his body. The explosion of magic shakes the entire forest, leaving even Xyrus stunned by the sheer magnitude of power released. When the dust settles, Arthur confesses the truth. His beast will originated from a dragon. The revelation leaves Xyrus momentarily speechless, realizing just how rare and extraordinary this is. Dragons are considered the highest and most powerful class of magical beasts. With Arthur's training now complete, Xyrus brings good news. The Sapin portal, the gateway connecting Elenoir to the human kingdom, is being reopened 2 years earlier than planned. The reason, he explains, is a grand cultural exchange meant to strengthen relations between elves, dwarves, and humans. This means Arthur will finally be able to leave Elenoir and reunite with his family much sooner than expected. That same night, something incredible happens. The crystal Sylvia gave Arthur years ago suddenly begins to glow, pulsing with light. Before his astonished eyes, it cracks open, revealing a tiny, infant black dragon. The hatchling blinks up at him with bright, curious eyes before letting out a soft chirp. To Arthur's amazement, the little dragon immediately recognizes him as its parent. Deeply moved, Arthur names her Sylvie, in honor of Sylvia. When Virion sees Sylvie, he quickly deduces what happened. The act of awakening Arthur's beast must have triggered the hatching of the dragon egg. The two are now deeply linked, their fates intertwined by the bond they share. In the days that follow, Arthur runs into Xyrus for the first time since their duel years ago. To his surprise, Xyrus has matured significantly and admits he never truly hated Arthur. As preparations for the cultural exchange continue, Tesha grows increasingly sad. Many of her friends, including Xyrus, will be participating and traveling to other kingdoms, but as the Princess of Elenoir, she cannot go due to strict security restrictions. On Arthur's final day in the city, Virion presents him with a beautifully crafted compass engraved with the Elenoir royal seal, granting him permission to return to Elenoir whenever he wishes. Just as Arthur is about to depart, Tesha nearly misses her chance to say goodbye. She rushes to him at the last moment, her eyes filled with emotion. The farewell is brief but heartfelt, marked by the unspoken bond between them that words can't quite express. Arthur then sets out for Xyrus, the magnificent flying city built upon a massive floating island. There, he finally arrives at his family's new home. As he steps inside, he's greeted by the faces he has longed to see for years, his parents, Reynolds and Alice. Arthur recounts his time away to his overjoyed parents, though he keeps Sylvia's existence to himself. Reynolds, now employed as a security officer at an auction house, is astonished by the sheer strength his son possesses, already nearly matching his own despite Arthur's young age. Soon after, they receive a visit from Reynolds' employer Vincent Helstia, along with his wife Tabitha and their daughter Lilia. Vincent is amazed by Arthur's abilities, noting that his power far exceeds that of the 12-year-old students attending Xyrus Magic Academy. At Reynolds' request, the two engage in a friendly sparring match. Using powerful fire magic, Reynolds pushes Arthur to his limits, but Arthur counters with advanced fire and water spells, holding his father to a stalemate. Impressed by Arthur's rare mastery of multiple elements, Vincent recommends that he be enrolled at Xyrus Academy, offering to personally cover the tuition and secure his admission, even though Arthur is only 8 years old. Later, Lilia introduces Arthur to the household staff, who quietly mention that she often worries about her future. Her parents have high expectations, hoping she will soon awaken a mana core and become a talented mage. The next morning, Arthur is surprised by a visit from the twin horns, who are overjoyed to see him alive, especially Jasmine, who still feels guilty for not saving him during the cliff incident. Their reunion sparks Arthur's curiosity about the adventurer lifestyle, a path that could one day allow him to explore the other kingdoms. While out shopping, Arthur senses a strange energy emanating from a shop that sells extracted beast cores. Lilia, who has long wished for one, is fascinated. These cores occasionally contain beast wills, offering a shortcut to power. However, her parents firmly disapprove, believing she should focus on awakening her own mana core naturally. Determined, Lilia sneaks away to a nearby shop to secretly purchase a cheap beast core. Arthur finds her and tries to talk her out of it, warning that such cores are unstable and might not work. Their heated exchange draws the attention of a few arrogant students from Xyrus Academy, who mock them and nearly start a fight. The situation quickly de-escalates once the boys realize Lilia is Vincent Helstia's daughter, whose family is a major financial supporter of the academy. Later, Vincent reassures Arthur that the confrontation won't affect his upcoming enrollment. Still, Lilia grows upset, feeling as though Vincent is sending Arthur to the academy only because she failed to awaken her powers. Consumed by jealousy and self-doubt, she lashes out before eventually realizing her mistake and apologizing to Arthur. To help ease the tension, Arthur fabricates a story that Lilia has traveled to Elenoir for special training. At first, Vincent and Tabitha are furious at the idea of their daughter leaving without permission, but as they talk, they begin to understand how much pressure they've placed on her. Lilia then steps forward and confesses the truth: she never left. She only wanted them to see how their expectations were affecting her. Moved by her honesty, Vincent apologizes and vows to support Lilia no matter what path she chooses. Inspired by Arthur's example, Lilia decides to attend Xyrus Academy on her own terms. Using Virion's mana technique, Arthur helps awaken the dormant cores within both Lilia and his little sister Elenoir, finally unlocking their potential. Overjoyed, Vincent hosts a celebration party to mark this new beginning. Yet elsewhere in the city, a mysterious man begins to take a dark interest in Vincent's auction house. Vincent hosts a grand auction attended by King Blaine, who purchases a rare world lion cub for his son, Prince Curtis, to become his mana beast companion. Among the attendees is Sebastian, the king's arrogant court magician, who takes an immediate interest in Sylvie. He demands that Arthur hand her over to serve as his own beast partner. When Arthur refuses, Sebastian grows hostile, threatening Arthur's family. Furious, Arthur's suppressed rage flares so intensely that his bloodlust disrupts the surrounding mana, shaking the entire building. The magical disturbance causes chaos, but King Blaine, unaware of the true cause, assumes it was the work of an assassin and punishes Reynolds for failing to ensure proper security. Sebastian then cruelly suggests that surrendering Sylvie would serve as suitable atonement. Enraged, Arthur refuses once again and boldly stands his ground against the king himself. Blaine orders his knights to seize Arthur, but Arthur easily defeats them, his power shocking everyone present. In the chaos, Arthur uses his ability to freeze time, isolating Sebastian from the rest of the world. Calmly, he approaches the terrified magician, shatters his leg, and reveals his mana beast core, which manifests as the image of Sylvia, striking fear deep into Sebastian's heart. The next day, King Blaine sends a royal messenger to the Helstia family with an apology. He announces that the knights involved have been dismissed, as has Sebastian, who was found raving about Arthur breaking his leg despite being across the room. To smooth things over, Blaine also sends a generous sum of gold, subtly implying that accepting it will prevent further punishment toward Reynolds. Reynolds, humble but pragmatic, tells Arthur to keep the gold for his future. Arthur, however, feels uneasy about how the situation ended. Determined to grow stronger and gain better control over his powers, he decides to enroll at Xyrus Academy, where he hopes to deepen his bond with Sylvie and understand her true potential. It's there, amidst the towering spires of the academy, that Arthur encounters a mysterious woman. The mysterious woman reveals herself to be Director Goodsky, the head of Xyrus Academy. To gauge his ability, she challenges Arthur to a duel. Though she defeats him with ease, she recognizes his extraordinary potential. Impressed by both his strength and composure, she offers to take him under her wing. Arthur agrees on one condition, that she extend her protection to his family. Director Goodsky accepts, and Arthur decides to postpone his official enrollment until he reaches the proper age. In the meantime, he plans to spend the next 3 years as an adventurer, honing his combat skills and real-world experience. His mother, Alice, reluctantly agrees, on the condition that he returns home every few months, while Reynolds insists he be accompanied by a seasoned adventurer. To everyone's surprise, Jasmine volunteers to mentor and protect him on his journey. Before departing, Arthur visits Vincent Helstia's shop to buy a proper sword but finds himself unimpressed by the available weapons. As he browses, Sylvie draws his attention to a heavy iron staff tucked away in a corner. Intrigued, Arthur examines it and soon discovers that it's no ordinary staff. It's a sword disguised by magic, one that can only be unsheathed when infused with mana. And to Arthur's astonishment, it shrinks and adjusts perfectly to his grip, suggesting it's a rare and powerful magic artifact. To avoid suspicion, Arthur purchases a cheap sword for appearances, while Vincent, believing the staff to be worthless, gives it to him for free as a disposable practice weapon. Weeks later, on his 9th birthday, Arthur receives heartfelt gifts from his family: a healing glove from Alice, a protective ring that alerts her if he's in mortal danger, and a single-use scroll capable of sending an emergency message. With his gear prepared and his resolve firm, Arthur says an emotional goodbye to his parents and sets off alongside Jasmine, ready to begin his new life as an adventurer. Jasmine takes Arthur to the Adventurers Guild to help him obtain his official license from Guild Master Caspian Blayheart, a stern but respected figure. During their meeting, Caspian mentions that Jasmine's father has been searching for her, though she coldly brushes it off. When it comes time to register, Arthur chooses to use an alias, identifying himself as Note. During the guild's examination, Arthur witnesses an arrogant half-elf named Lucas Wykes attempting a cowardly sneak attack on his examiner. Arthur quickly intervenes, preventing any harm, and Lucas is harshly reprimanded, though he still manages to scrape by with a B rank. Arthur's own evaluation is handled personally by Caspian, who recognizes his skill and assigns him the same B rank classification. However, the sudden influx of young adventurers achieving high ranks raises suspicion among the guild officials. Caspian, unfazed, explains that this surge is likely due to the recent cultural exchange, which led to the lifting of the ban on elves and dwarves joining the guilds. He also shares brief backgrounds of notable new adventurers: Lucas, the half-elf son of an elven slave, and her master, Lord Wykes, who sought a powerful sorcerer heir, and Elijah Knight, a human boy raised by dwarves. Later, Jasmine takes Arthur to a low-risk training area to help him adjust to the adventurer lifestyle. During their session, an escaped boar-type mana beast suddenly charges into the field, wreaking havoc. As Arthur prepares to strike, a vision of his past self appears in his mind, warning him to stay calm and wait for the perfect moment. Heeding the advice, Arthur bides his time and, with precise timing, delivers a decisive blow that kills the beast instantly. Afterward, Jasmine opens up about her past, revealing that she became an adventurer to escape her noble family, the Flamesworths, who rejected her after discovering she lacked their family's signature fire magic. The confession strengthens the bond between them. Meanwhile, in Elenoir, Tesha watches Arthur through a crystal ball and grows jealous upon seeing him traveling with another woman. 2 years later, Arthur has become a renowned adventurer, known across the land by his alias, Note, the Masked Swordsman. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.